Film Companion gets you your film fix. Hit the bell icon and subscribe to get notified every time we drop a new video.
I feel a loss of empathy towards real people, and I feel more empathy towards fictional characters that I'm writing. Lynch says this amazing thing, David Lynch, that your mind is a pond full of fish, and all you have to do is feed food to the fish so that the idea comes out. But if you don't feed the food, the fish will die. I just think that the speed at which, storytelling is being changed or being improved upon is very, very fast. And by the time you've done something and you've released something, that thing is already 3 years older than what is cool now.
Hi, Dhruv, and welcome to the Binge List. It's great to have you on the show.
Likewise, man. Likewise. It's always good to talk to Film Companion and you.
So first off, I have to ask, it's been a very strange couple of months. We're all, for a lot of reasons. So, and I know you've been working on a script. So has that been a good time to write? On the one hand, we have a lot of time, but it's also a very scary time. So has it been a good time for writing and creating?
Yeah, I think the first 3 months were a lot of fun because you were able to kind of do things that you've not done before. Watch like 50 utensils in one go, finish an entire podcast and not put it on pause or hold, whatever. So it was fun and I was getting a lot of writing done and I'm still getting a fair amount of writing done. But I think I'm not fatigued and neither do I get bored very easily. But I just find with everything that's happening around in our country to be in a kind of a stagnant mode. I'm feeling very, very not feeling good to write, not feeling good about being awake, not feeling good about even ordering food, so even the simple things are just kind of feeling more rotten than ever before. Yeah, anyway. So it's supposed to be something else. I made it something else.
Because it really makes you reflect on what we do and how it matters in the larger scheme of things. So it's a very fair point.
Yeah.
And are you looking forward to getting back on set? Are you excited? Are you worried by the idea? Is it a bit of both?
You can never be 100% sure. Even I can make some mistakes. You take some spare change or spare money, you touch your own eye, you touch somebody else, you high five someone else, and set is a ticking time bomb. But I guess the things at stake. So
yeah, life must go on.
Yeah, life must go on in some way. Yeah.
Coming to your list of your 5 favorite shows, I have to say it's probably the most specific and unique list we've had from anyone on this show. And they're all such interesting picks. They're sort of very non-obvious, non-mainstream. So we have to start with your first, which happens to be one of my favorite TV shows, which is none other than True Detective. It's one of those shows, I think it's the greatest example of this accessible show, which has this absorbing murder mystery over 20 years, but how it uses that to really go to very meaningful and profound places. And it's also the show, I think, that's kicked off this era of peak TV, as they call it, the TV shows that can be so much more. But yes, why True Detective? Why is this on your list?
So I never really watched much of crime or thriller. But after a point, I realized that I'm not growing in terms of my viewing experience, in terms of the books that I am reading, in terms of what I'm able to create. And so I just thought, everybody's talking about True Detective, and I'll probably watch it after 6 months, which is what I did. I watched it after 6 months. And I thought, man, I've never seen anything like this before. Also because I haven't seen a lot of thriller, so there could be better examples of the same genre. But then, I just thought that, in the stories that I read, in the stories that I want to tell, I say what I'm feeling very easily. There aren't many layers. But here's this show which is so fucking layered,
Yeah.
It talks about philosophy. It talks about what it is to be a good man. It talks about what it is to be a bad man. It talks about the corruption in the whole nexus of religion, politics, and police. And yet it's a story about hope. And it talks about the brutalities that are all around us and what we can do or how powerful or powerless we are. And I'm like, how do people pack in so much,
Yeah.
And that's a common thread amongst a lot of shows that I'm going to talk about. How do people pack in so much? But anyway, also I was so sucked in by the mood that the show created,
Yeah.
And how Fargo does this very well also, that maybe there is just a character जिसको सिर्फ 2 लाइनें ही बोलनी है, but उस 2 लाइनें में उसका character दिखेगा. So there is a life, there is history, and there is a dignity to each and every character. And yeah, even story of how it came about and everything. And yeah, man, I think it's a very, very good show which talks about where the world is right now, you know.
Yeah.
And I saw it again because of this. And you know,
Yeah.
I messaged you also, and thank you for doing this, because I was watching it and I'm like, this is so beautiful, man. It's such a for a writer, this is like orgasmic, this show. Yeah.
And it really holds up. I mean, it's been 8 years or whatever it is, and today it's just as good. It's aged so well.
It'll always hold up because I mean, the questions have always remained the same since, you know, human beings started talking about things beyond food, I guess. You know, ever since they became assholes. So it'll always hold up. Yeah.
And we have to talk about Rust Cole, you know, Matthew McConaughey's character. I think he's one of the all-time great TV characters, or just characters. I mean, he's so fascinating. He's so layered, like you said. He's one of the most quotable characters. You know, you just want to speak like him. It's also you can't separate the writing from the performance.
Yeah, but you know, such great and confident performance that you end up drinking it almost, you know.
Yeah.
I remember every time I'm watching True Detective, I walk around the house thinking I'm him, you know, and I call my girlfriend Marty and I'm like, Marty, bartan ho gaye kya? She's like, just shut the fuck up, please leave. You know, the good TV always makes you think that the characters or good performances, that there is something more to him than he's saying, you know, and that he's always thinking. In silences, you get to know whether the person is a great actor or not. In the way he looks, in the way he walks, in those non-verbal communications, you know. And he's a master of it, and how he would just walk, and how he would just look. Yeah, very intoxicating. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
It's one of those shows where technically you can say murder mystery thriller, but it really transcends genre, as the best shows do. When you watch these things, does it ever make you frustrated that as a creator in India, there are almost these 2-3 set genres where you're confined to? This is what works or what has worked. So do you ever feel like there's less freedom to really just be completely free to create and tell stories from all over the place?
Yeah, my frustration is less with people who are buying these stories or who have the purchasing power, but my frustration is more with my own self, you know, in that sense. Okay. I'm just, and this is not being diplomatic, you know, like the shows that I'm going to talk about, including True Detective. As a writer, of course, you have the ambition of doing this and everything. But then 2 things scare me. You know, one is that A, I'm not able to do it, but B, when I'm able to do it, will I be doing a copy paste of it? You know, and that scares me, because how do you create your own language? You know, and how do you just see the world from a totally different point of view? Yeah. And I believe that point of view happens over a long time, you know, after 30, 40 years. There's some directors, these young, like Javier Dolan, who've achieved it very, very, very early. And
we come to your next pick, which is another massive heavy hitter. I think it's probably one of the most influential TV shows of all time, which is The Sopranos. You know, it really is a show that showed us what TV can do and be. It gave us the greatest anti-hero, you know, of all time, one of the greats, which is obviously Tony Soprano. But yes, why The Sopranos? What is your relationship with this show?
Oh, again, I wake up late in almost everything. So I started watching it last year. And just today, I started watching the first episode of the 4th season. And from my time of watching it till today, I've recommended 4 people to watch this show, and all 4 of them finished it literally in 15 to 20 days. I don't believe in the idea of binging much. Why Sopranos? Because a friend of mine told me that's his favorite show, and I trust him.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let me watch it. And I think it's the best thing I've ever seen in my life, to be very honest. It is so universal. It is so accessible. Every theme that the show touches upon is so beautifully rounded, be it about, you know, the sexual tension of a couple, you know, when the sexual tension is fading, the relationship of the mother and him, the relationship of the psychiatrist, the relationship of Tony with himself, which is probably the best relationship in the history of TV writing. Everything is so beautifully rounded without trying to be smart, you know. And I think that just, I get goosebumps thinking about it, because when we think of a clever idea, we also want to say it in the most clever way.
Yeah.
Sopranos doesn't do that, but they still believe in the simplicity of conversation. They still believe that everything heavy and depth should be conveyed, and let's not try and be over smart, but let's not give something stupid. Let's not give something dumb. Let's let's really make a masterpiece, but in the language that everyone understands that. And I think that needs to be really, really respected, because again, in our culture, especially in our industry, the smart people have a certain way of telling films, and the people who don't wish to make smart films have a certain way of telling films.
Yeah.
So this
There's a disconnect.
Yeah, there's a disconnect, and there always will be. The ease with which you can tell a beautiful idea, I think that's skill. That's the mastery of a writer, and Soprano does it so beautifully.
Just coming to your third pick, which could not be more different, from The Sopranos, which is Midnight Diner: Tokyo Stories on Netflix. It's such a sort of small, wonderful show. I'm ashamed to say I wasn't aware of the show. I watched it because it was on your list, and I fell entirely in love with it. It's this wonderful look at humanity and connection, and how food brings people together. But yes, when did you discover this? And is it your love of food or your love of stories? What drew you to the show?
Just random algorithms, I guess. It was also the first Netflix show that I saw ever. And at that time, there were talks of Netflix with Dice and talks about LT, and I would speak to all of them. I'm like, have you seen Midnight Diner? Have you seen Midnight Diner? And they would all say, you're the first person who's spoken to us about this show. And apparently it does very well in India, though I don't know many people who've seen it. I know a couple of people. Yeah, I know a couple of them. Why that show? Because it's set in Japan, and I think anything and everything from Japan there is some sense of uniqueness. It's also the only show jiska main intro nahi skip karta. It is so meditative. It puts you into the mood. It's almost like you're having miso soup before having some meal. It just talks about again, the modern life, and I'm not talking about The Sopranos and The True Detective, but just modern life, the busy lives, and just that one moment of quietness, and that one moment of just one moment of peace, and it just magnifies that one moment and just stretches it out. So it just makes you feel like, oh, this is me after coming back from work, having noticed that, oh, there's no electricity in the house, so I just lie down in the darkness. It's just that one moment, but they just stretch it out. And I mean, they're covering all the great topics.
I was going to ask you, do you have a favorite episode or favorite story, one that really stuck with you?
I really like the Pawn Star one,
Yeah.
I really like that. I also really like the baseball one, where the guy becomes the baseball, where he meets his idol. And no, I like all of them, man. I really like all of them. Again, one of those shows which I didn't binge. Again, it's a Saturday show.
Yeah.
I find my refuge in these in some shows, and Midnight Diner is at the top of it. Very gentle, man, very gentle. And I think a show like that, to craft something gentle, is also very, very difficult. As probably difficult as crafting something as violent and brutally honest as True Detective, or as internal as Sopranos. A much, much, much appreciated show, I guess, for me, and a show that should be appreciated by a lot of people. I find that show to be very Japanese, because there are multiple times in the show where you are like, yeah, the actors are just, they're hamming, or they're over the top, or their reactions. But I really like that, because they, it's maybe their culture, it's maybe their television, and it's maybe their language, or it's maybe their form of expression. And they're not kind of trying to make something for the West or for the global market. It is so beautifully local, Again, keeps reminding me, very specific. It reminds me of Malayalam cinema also. Midnight Diner, Malayalam cinema, I think they go hand in hand also. Yeah.
And like you said, it's one of those shows where I think it's what Netflix does best. It highlights universal stories, gives us a window into a different culture, and there are so many people from across the world like us who relate to it. Has that ever happened with Little Things, that you've had people from other places and other cultures message you saying, this is me and this is my story?
Yeah, man, a lot of times. Today I got a message from Atlanta. A lot of messages I get from are from Turkey, South America and Mexico. I think there are some cultural similarities.
Wow.
But my favorite midnight diner-esque moment of Little Things is during Little Things season 2. I got a message from the girl, if she's watching, hello, who was translating the show. Who was doing the subtitles.
Yeah.
And she had a doubt about a particular dish, pitla bakri, I think. And she said, "Could you just tell me what is the basic of this, or something like some?" She asked me something,
Yeah.
and that was when I felt really glad about everything, because I'm like, wow, somebody in South Korea will be watching my show. And then when the Turkish poster for Midnight for Little Things came out, that also made me very nice.
Midnight Diner is an anthology series. Every episode is a different story about a different customer. As a writer, is there something freeing about writing an anthology? You're not tied to the same characters or the same plot. Is that a very freeing idea?
It is, man. I've been trying to make an anthology for God knows how many. I've even made a pilot. I think it's pretty good. And I have a bunch of these anthology ideas. But what happens now? So Midnight Diner had a difficult time getting a second season and stuff like that, because they want to create properties, right? And rightly so.
Yeah.
Can't really blame them. So if they want an anthology, they're like, who are your recurring characters?
Yeah.
Will they be coming back? So, but it is extremely free, man. It is extremely.
Yeah.
It's like writing a cartoon. Every day, like a newspaper column.
On to your next pick, which is looking much closer to home, which is an Indian show.
Hmm.
It's one of those very experimental shows on YouTube from the early days of the web space, which is Taxidermy. It's a show that not a lot of people would have seen. It's what I guess you describe as metafiction. It's a show about a crew creating a web series and how sort of, real life and fiction sort of merge and blend together in all these interesting ways. But yes, when did you discover this show?
When it had come out, there
Yeah.
were a couple of friends who were working on it. I wouldn't say Vas is like a friend, but someone that I really respect, because he made Untitled Karthik Krishnan. Someone who you are always excited by, his language. Again, very individualistic in that sense. My biggest reason to like that show is, it came out at a time when the whole digital space, or the whole web series, was just, beginning to get, people were exploring, and it was just about to get exploded. And I remember Pictures had come out, and Permanent Roommates, and I think LT was going to come out or some shit like that. But when this came out, right, it just gave me the feeling that there is so much of ambition with this medium.
Yeah.
There are so many possibilities. It was pure excitement for someone having had the chance and the skill to create something in just a studio,
Yeah.
and what craft. And it was just the love for ambition of, of an idea. How can somebody achieve this? And if this is where we are headed, and if this is the starting point, then the web space or the digital space is just going to be the most exciting storytelling industry in India.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've felt that excitement ever since, to be very honest. Maybe other than with Delhi Crime and Lakho Mein Ek. But I was just so excited by the medium of digital storytelling. I'm like, man, look at what this guy's achieved. And I remember going everywhere and recommending. I'm like, dekho yaar, usne kya kar diya,
And it's like you said earlier, it's one of those shows where it's amazing the kind of ideas they crammed into just what I think is like 5 episodes or something.
Yes, man.
It's insane. Do you ever? The show is a very sort of cerebral show. It has such interesting ideas about reality and where reality ends and fiction begins. Do you ever have those existential thoughts about the fact that you are a real person whose entire job it is to make fake people who you then play and sort of bring into reality?
My thing is, yeah, I feel a loss of empathy towards real people, and I feel more empathy towards fictional characters that I'm writing.
Yeah.
And I know this is not the truth, but this is what I'm struggling with right now, is that, you feel saturated with empathy to the point that you just feel spent and dried out, that all you have energy for is to go on Zomato and order pizza and just eat and just crash, and either you've spent your energy on your, on watching the news, or spending it on Instagram, or writing, or just forcing yourself to learn things because the internet is great and there's so much of free knowledge there. But yeah, this whole existential crisis or whatever it is, that you just don't care for real people. Sometimes I look at my girlfriend and I see her face when I'm saying something to her, and she really listens, and whenever she's saying something, of course I'm listening, but there's a thought in my head where I'm like, am I listening as much as she listens to me?
Yeah.
Or are you listening as much as you're listening when you're writing? So for me, that is been a struggle, but I think there are ways to come out of it.
But as a writer, when you mentioned that you feel spent in terms of empathizing to that degree for what you're working on, what's the key to sort of resetting yourself and to keep going when you feel like that? How do you sort of get out of it?
Again, you learn from people who have done this all their life. And Lynch says this amazing thing, David Lynch, that your mind is a pond full of fish, and all you have to do is feed food to the fish so that the idea comes out. But if you don't feed the food, the fish will die. So you feed the fish or you feed your mind by doing things which are a little different from your work. Maybe you get into a different hobby, you go for a long walk.
Coming to your last, but by no means least pick, which is, it's the most recent show on your list that came out this year. It's I May Destroy You. It is such, I have to say, watching this did destroy me a bit. It is such a sort of personal, devastating show about sort of one woman who's sort of sexually assaulted and how that impacts her and sort of impacts the relationships in her life. And through that, it really sort of explores consent in various forms. So yes, when and how did you come across this show, and why is this on your list?
Again, Hotstar, HBO, you always click on it. And I saw it when it was running, so I didn't see it all together. And that was a good thing, because it's one show where I don't know how people will be able to binge, much like Delhi Crime. I just can't do it. I feel scared to even talk about that show, because I feel that whatever I'm going to say will feel like, oh, it's not, why are you critiquing a show like this, or why are you even giving your inputs like that? But I'll tell you what it did to me personally. It made me really shut up and just think, and it just made me not do anything. It made me shocked. It made me realize how brutal things can be, and the cost of damage. We talk about damage that the parents do. We talk about damage that the country does. But here the damage is so prolonged, and it just, I've never been able to articulate my thoughts about the show very well. So I'm not going to do a great job of it. But I just think it's a very important show and everybody should watch it. But if I have to analyze the show in terms of its writing, in terms of its craft, I just like how personality driven the show is, how much like Fleabag, this show has the stamp of the creator on it, and how, in bold ink almost, how real she's trying to go, how much she's pushing it. It's pretty much like being not watching. It's like being in a boxing match and just being knocked out time and again, and again, and you really feel for her. So such a brave show, man, and such great storytelling. And it's so, it just makes you think about so many things about man, woman, and the idea of consent, obviously.
I think, like you said, it is a very tough show to discuss and process. I think it really speaks to the power of the medium, that, it really shows you how much detail, a TV show format can get you into. It shows you every aspect of the dynamics of her life and sort of her past and her parents. And it really gives you such a well-rounded picture of this person. It's a show that really doesn't preach. It's a very uncomfortable show.
No, it doesn't.
It really makes you introspect, but it's not sort of messaging. It really is just laying it in front of you and you process it as you do. Is that tough as a writer? Is that the toughest part, to just lay something down without sort of force feeding any sort of message or statement down an audience's throat?
Yeah, there are. I think it's so. This question is so cultural oriented. No, we love to talk. We love to talk about things which are not important, and we love to talk about things which are really important in ways that they become, less important. So I do that a lot in my writing, or I used to do it a lot, and I still find myself doing it to the point that every time I write something, my girlfriend's like, "Why do you even need all this? Just cut it out, just cut it out, just cut it out." And I'm able to understand when somebody else is doing it. I'm like, "Why the fuck is he doing this? You don't need all this." But it's very difficult, man. It's very difficult to have this sharp eye. It's very difficult to pack so much in such limited time and make it wholesome and a great cinematic experience. It's very difficult. But it happens, and it can happen. I just think that the speed at which storytelling is being changed or being improved upon is very, very fast. And by the time you've done something and you've released something, that thing is already 3 years older than what is cool now. So as a creator, especially here, because sadly trends are getting made in West and they're followed here, you always feel you're behind, a little behind. And to be thoroughly original and authentic is to kind of do what all great artists do. You have to block and you have to really submit yourself. And maybe one day I'll be able to do that.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's one of those things where you're just so grateful that you have creators like that are being championed today, that are getting creative control, so they can be so specific about what they want to say. Thank you so much. This was so wonderful talking to you. Like I said, your picks are so sort of different, and it's so great to get your perspective as a writer and creator. And it's great to see what TV shows can be today and the kinds of things people are doing. And we can only hope that we see some semblance of that here. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Dhruv.
Thank you. Thank you for making me do this. It was lovely. Hi, if you like this video, then please subscribe to Film Companion.